This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by Matchroom's Frank Smith. Frank, I imagine you're far more relieved now and far more happier now than what you were a few days ago. Obviously, we've just had the announcement, or a few hours ago, rather, had the announcement of Joshua-Helenius will now be taking place on Saturday night. Before we come on to that, let's just kind of rewind to the initial findings of Dillian Whyte's adverse finding from a Vada test. What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, look, obviously shocked. I was away actually, so I woke up to it on Saturday morning. I took a trip away. Maybe it was a bad idea. I thought it would be a nice, quiet weekend. So I woke up to it Saturday morning, quite shocked. Look, it was obviously a massive event. It was going to be a huge show, big domestic heavyweight fight. And yeah, it was a kick in the teeth. But you're so used to now in this business, so many things not going the way you want them to, that it kind of goes over your head, not in a negative way, but just like, right, let's just get a solution. You're not as shocked maybe when things go wrong as you used to be years ago, because we've been through it all now. Now, whether that's injuries, whether that's doping, you've been through those moments. So it was just like, right, now let's focus on making something happen.
One thing I'm interested in is, and obviously there's a lot to touch around it. I know Dillian's going to obviously be going through his process right now with his legal team, trying to get to the bottom of what's what. But regardless of whatever the outcome is, and even if he finds it and he's able to prove his innocence, is Joshua-Whyte 2 most likely not going to happen in the future as well now, with AJ looking towards the Wilder fight, for example, and other big fights?
Yeah, look, he's focused obviously on Saturday night first and foremost. Wilder is obviously the fight that we want. We've been talking about for a long time. I'm confident we make that happen at the end of this year into the early part of next year. And then he still wants the other big fights, so it's let's see. Anything can happen in boxing over the years. We've seen that time and time again. But it's definitely the plan is we've got Saturday night, then move on to the Wilder fight, get a big win there. The Fury fights, a possibility. But again, we do so much talking about the heavyweight division. I kind of think if I say these things, people are going to complain that they haven't been made yet. But the will and desire is there to make those fights happen.
Frank, obviously we all tuned in to listen to Simon, George and Eddie going back and forth earlier during that call. Simon said that yourself and Robert Smith caught up on Friday to discuss the findings in Dillian's test. Can you just kind of fill us in as to where that accusation or allegation, if you'd like, came from?
I'm not sure. He subsequently said he got it wrong, but I don't know whether he's saying that he heard that it was Friday. I don't know, but it just goes to show, like he talks like he's got infinite knowledge of everything. People believe him, and in occasions like that, it shows that just because someone says something doesn't mean it's true. Because he came out afterwards and then said, oh, no, it was Saturday. And they're the kind of things. What he was looking to do, although he came out and said, no, I was trying to say you did a good job, he was looking to say that we delayed it a day of announcing it, basically, is what he was looking to do. Let's be honest. He can dress it up how he wants, say, no, I was being positive. No, you were trying to say that we got it on Friday and we didn't announce it till Saturday. We found out Saturday. I spoke to Robert Smith. I got the screenshot. I spoke to him at 10:48 on Saturday morning. That's when I finally got hold of. We were trying to get hold of each other. That's when I got hold of him, and we announced that, I don't know, 11:30, 12, something like that, around that sort of time. It was very quick. So that's where it's damaging, in a sense of people can say things, people then treat that as the 100% truth, that because Simon Jordan said it, and that's actually a load of rubbish.
Just sticking with kind of a testing front then, and how any of these times could possibly overlap. Obviously, Dan Raphael reported there were multiple tests filed on behalf of Dillian. Firstly, is that the case?
Look, the details of the testing, everything around it is not something we can go into detail of. There's strict confidentiality that Dillian's team are now going through. So I'm not going to go into details of the testing, the dates. You heard it on the Simon Jordan show earlier. They asked Eddie what date the test was. That's all confidential, and that's something that Dillian and his team will deal with. And we're not involved in that process. So I'm not going to go into details of all of that, because it's not our place to do that at this time.
I know there's obviously not too much that you can say then, but just kind of comparing it with Conor's case, for example. He came out afterwards about a previous test which Conor had done, which he tested positive during. So when you guys found out about Dillian's test, whether it was 1 or 2 tests, whatever it may have been, you found out collectively on Saturday morning.
Everything, yeah, we found out the details of the doping issue on Saturday morning, and it was very early hours of Saturday morning. The email comes through. I think it was something like 12:30 a.m., 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. The email came through, and then obviously people were in all different time zones. We worked through there, to get things moving, and made the announcement as soon as possible. And look, I've seen there's a lot of comparisons to you did this here, you did that there. It's a different scenario. Every situation is different. And at the same time, we're big enough to admit we learned from what went on around the Conor Benn and Eubank situation. They are completely different situations, different this, different, all the details are very different, but we learn. And it's hard for us because we can't really win. People say, well, you didn't do that here. It's like, well, you don't know all of the details around it. And at least say to us, okay, well done. Within X hours of it happening, the fight was off. So let's treat this instance in its own. That was a year ago, that last situation, or 8, 9, 10 months, whatever the period was. And we dealt with this, we feel, in the right way as quickly as possible. So like everyone can draw the comparisons to it, but treat this on its own independent merit. I feel like we dealt with it as quickly as you possibly could.
People are still waiting to find out what the substance is. Can you share with us what that is, Frank? And if you can't, is it at least different to something which we've heard of previously from a fighter failing a test from?
Again, look, not people moan about it. I can't go into any details about substance, anything like that. It wouldn't be right for me to do it. And look, the other thing I'd say is Dillian now has to go through the process. He's got that battle ahead of him, and that's his process to go through. And you have to give him that time to go through it. We're not going to speak out about the details around it. It's not our place. But Dillian will go through that process, and that's he's got a battle ahead of him, I'm sure. And then once the details are there and available for people to see, if ever, that's when people can make a judgment on all of this. Like I say, I'm not going into detail of it. But that's something that I'm sure in time you'd be able to speak to Dillian and his team around.
Can I just ask it? And again, it's somewhat comparing with the Conor case, but obviously the Conor case dragged out for some time. It's still technically, everybody's still talking about it. It's still ongoing, if you will, on that note. But with Dillian's case, do you expect it to maybe have a sooner resolution? Do you expect it to be as prolonged as what Conor's case was?
I don't know. Look, I think the Conor case has dragged on longer than it should have done. I think, it's been, like I say, 10 months nearly. Yeah, I mean, where are we? We're August. That was October. It all came together. Again, all of these cases that you have to treat on their own independent sort of situations. And, I can't sit here today and say it's going to take this long or it's going to take that long. I hope that the various parties come to conclusions, the right conclusions. And like I say, whether that's, he will go through a process with people who are experts within this field. Whether that takes 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, I don't know. And it's not really our position to comment on, really.
How did AJ take the news? I know Eddie read out the message which he received from him, but I imagine personally he was obviously somewhat frustrated, gutted, disappointed, but it's not the name he'd been preparing for, not the name he wanted to face come Saturday.
Look, AJ's a true professional. He just wanted to fight. I think he's been through a lot in his career, and it was just one of those, okay, on we move. Let's figure out what we do. I want to fight. I've been training for, I don't know, 10, 12 weeks, whatever it is. Been training very hard, been learning a lot under Derek James, and the focus was always to get a new fight. So not ideal, but he's been in the game long enough now to understand things happen, and you have to pivot and make a new plan.
Robert Helenius, Frank, how did you end up on the Finnish nightmare?
Look, as you can imagine, as soon as this news came out on Saturday morning, every man and their dog were onto us with heavyweights, bridgerweights, cruiserweights, even some light heavies as well who had blown up. But the reality is, and people will have their view and say, you should have made this fight, you should have done this fight. And the most simple way is there was probably 30, 40 names who came along and said, I'll take the fight, I'll take the fight. And of course, you know, like it's like me saying, I'll take the fight, but asking for 25 million quid because I'll get pummeled by Anthony Joshua, as an example. Just giving you, you know, and people go through names and you look at names and you say, right, Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz would want an absolute fortune for that fight. It wasn't realistic that we were going to get a deal done and in place. He called him out on social media. He got a few eyeballs. Fair play to him. Fine. Filip Hrgovic. Filip Hrgovic has been training to fight Dempsey McKean, a southpaw, for 10 weeks. He's also mandatory for the IBF world title if he wins this fight. You know, so it's not just a case of should have fought him. There'd be complications there. Dempsey McKean, a southpaw. AJ have been training for Dillian Whyte for 10 or 12 weeks. You're not going to fight a southpaw. That rules out 10 of the people who approached us. Joseph Parker, he's fought him before. I don't think the figures would have been realistic. So I think it's easy for people to say, should have done this fight or should have done that fight or shouldn't have done the fight. Can't really win, is the reality. And not everyone's going to be happy with the choice. Our focus was make sure Anthony Joshua box. Once he said, no, I want to box, and you could have respected him and say, no, do you know what? I've got a big potential fight at the end of the year. I've got these plans. I'll just leave it. But he wanted to fight. Then you got the undercard fighters who have been training for 10 or 12 weeks. The key for us was then to ensure they get paid. You know, they've been training for a long time and, you know, they only get paid when they fight. So if we would have pulled the show, everyone would have been like, oh, you didn't give everyone the opportunity. You didn't give the undercard fighters an opportunity. Wanted to see a show. Any opponent we pick, whoever it was, whoever, you know, unless it was, I don't know, we pulled Fury away from the Ngannou fight or Usyk away from the Dubois fight. You know, you get what I'm saying. People would have had issues with. And look, people will draw comparisons with Helenius to the Wilder stoppage. He went in there with Deontay Wilder. He went to have a fight with him. He did. Like he wasn't shying away in the first round. He was going. He was throwing punches, and he got caught with a big shot. That's what Deontay Wilder does, and it's heavyweight boxing, and it could happen to anyone. So you know, I think we're in for a good fight, and like I say, it's very easy for a lot of people to have an opinion. And look, we've now come out. We said you get your refunds, as we always do. It's not the product you bought in the first place. There you go. There's your refund. If you want it, we think it's still a great heavyweight night of boxing. So we think you still have a great night. It's not pay-per-view anymore. There's your refunds on your pay-per-view if you've already bought it. It's part of your subscription. You know, so like I don't think we really could have done any more. Can never win in the situation, but I think, you know, in a hard situation, we delivered well.
There's obviously just a few things to pick up on there, Frank. Just sticking with the opponent front, from what was being reported yesterday, it seemed to at one point come down to whether it be Robert Helenius or Gerald Washington. Now, Gerald Washington stopped Robert Helenius when they fought. I mean, I saw Derek Chisora's name obviously creeping up. David Haye doing interviews as well, saying that he spoke to Derek Chisora, who said that he wouldn't be surprised if Dillian doesn't fight AJ. What did you make of that from what David Haye had to say about not seeing the fight go ahead from his conversations with Derek?
Yeah, but I think those were conversations that happened after this. So, like, as in after this had happened on Saturday?
No, so the interview was, so David was saying that he spoke to Derek like a week prior to.
Maybe that's Derek being Derek. We all know, like, Derek's great, and he may say things, you know, that build things up. Look, I think Derek came on about the fight. You got to remember at the same time, Anthony and Derek's managed by 258, Anthony's management company. Derek and Anthony have known each other for a long, long time, like literally longer than I've known either of them, you know, so they got a relationship. Gerald Washington, obviously fighting Derek Chisora on the card. It was all, I think that was never really our focus. Eddie said it a couple of days ago, or responded to a few people around it. We think Helenius is a decent opponent. He had a win on Saturday night, you know, after a period out. He's fit, he's been training, and he's ready. And look, he's 6'9", he's going to come to fight. And you know, Anthony wanted a decent fight.
Obviously, no matter what, as you said, the fans aren't going to be happy. But for AJ now, he has had a full camp. There were critics from the Franklin fight. I'm sure he's going to want to put those to bed. Going into this, he'll be a big favourite. So what are you hoping that he does show to everybody on Saturday night?
Look, like you say, there were critics around the Franklin fight, but at the end of the day, he went in there and he won almost every round, showed a lot of improvements, which he's learned under Derek James. I think there'd been a lot of talk about going in there, getting a knockout win. Yes, we all would have liked to have seen that. But again, the improvements are good. And no one moans really when they see other heavyweights go 12 rounds with someone and out, and win almost every round. Everyone's like, oh, it's great because that's the person they like. AJ seems to always come under a lot of criticism. But hopefully we see a big performance from him. He's been in great shape in camp, and it'd be great to see a big finish from him. Obviously, eyes all set towards the big one later this year, hopefully.
Just sticking with kind of a card, if AJ wasn't able to get a replacement opponent, was it ever a possibility that the card does go ahead still?
Honestly, very unlikely is the reality. It was very unlikely. Look, AJ's a huge ticket seller. We all know that. He's done amazing things for the sport, and the card was built around the Joshua-Whyte fight. But obviously, Anthony, like we saw with Franklin, he sells a lot of tickets. He sold out against Jermaine Franklin. I still think, looking at the numbers where we are today, we're going to have a sold-out show come Saturday night at the O2. Yeah, but I think the structure, the costs around the show, everything around it would have been very difficult to run the show without Anthony headlining.
I know that you deal with a lot of kind of that background stuff, Frank, as you mentioned, kind of restructuring the show, the finances involved. With that in mind, how difficult has it been to restructure the entire deal? Obviously, it's been pulled from the zone pay-per-view as well now onto the normal subscription. Just on that side of things, how much of a nightmare or difficult of a period has this been on that front?
Yeah, look, and we have to thank the zone. It's a tough period for everyone. Like, none of us are in an ideal situation. For us as a business, it doesn't make financial sense for the show to go ahead. Is the reality? But at the same time, we wanted to keep the show running. The zone have stepped up, and it's easy for people to have an opinion and say they should do this, they should do that. But we're working quite quickly in the moment there over a weekend, trying to put together a plan that works for everyone, a structure that works for everyone, and make sure everyone's happy. So it's not just a case of, oh, Dillian's out, we're going to switch in Robert Helenius or any of the other 20 names. That's all good to go. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, guys. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and there's a lot of people involved, and it's, I'd love for us to have been able to announce something quicker or get something out quicker, but it's a process that we have to go through. And like I say, we have to say a big thanks for DAZN for keeping the backing and the support of the fight and keeping it on, not just for Anthony but the rest of the card as well.
I know the fight was only announced about 4 hours ago now, Frank. By the time I'm doing this interview, it's just about to turn 4 p.m. here. So what's kind of the initial reaction been like in terms of people potentially returning tickets? Have there been a big uprising in that or not?
Very small in all honesty, which I actually expected. Look, it's a big heavyweight night. AJ, as I say, is a huge star in the sport. And I think, people are still going to come for that night out at the O2. But yeah, the numbers are very strong. I think, we'll get a clearer picture later this evening. The bulk of refunds will be done. But I still see the majority of the venue being full up. It's like I say, it's a stacked card, not just AJ against Robert Helenius, but you got Filip Hrgovic against Dempsey McKean. The winner of that, essentially mandatory for Alexander Usyk to go for the world title next. Derek Chisora against Washington. Everyone knows Derek Chisora always brings entertainment. He's got a huge fan base. Johnny Fisher, he's going to have the Bosch Army there. He's fighting for his first title fight. You've got Campbell Hatton on there, Maisie Rose, George Liddard, and now Brandon Scott as well. So I actually think off pay-per-view, it's probably one of the best cards we've done in terms of, from top to bottom. So I still expect, like I say, a strong turnout on Saturday night.
We saw Deontay Wilder in Vegas at Spence Crawford, and we asked him about the AJ fight, and he just simply said he's fighting Anthony Joshua in January. Can you kind of tell us, Frank, how close is it?
Look, there's still work to be done, but that is definitely our plan. That's been our focus for a long time. We've been very vocal about it. That's been the aim, obviously working hard with Skill Challenge and the team. That's the aim to get done. Still work to be done. And obviously as well, still the focus is on Saturday night. This is heavyweight boxing. You can't take your eye off the ball. There's always chances of upset. So he's fully focused on Saturday, and then we move on from there. But as we've said, that's definitely the aim for us, make that Deontay Wilder fight.
Can I just ask Frank, that Deontay Wilder fight, is that a separate deal from a Fury Usyk bout taking place on the same night?
Yeah, I don't know where conversations are up to with that. You know, obviously Fury's fighting Ngannou in October 28th, I believe. Usyk's fighting Dubois. You know, obviously you got the IBF mandatory as well for Usyk due next. So look, I can't speak on conversations about that. We're just fully focused on delivering Anthony Joshua a big fight, and that's where our focus remains.
Frank, just moving away from all things AJ and this kind of situation you found yourselves in and having to deal with. Conor Benn, we haven't had a chance to catch up, obviously, since his provisional suspension was lifted by UKAD. Just kind of your reflections, please, on this year and obviously that news when it came out.
Yeah, look, it's been a long year for no one more than Conor Benn, what he's been through over this period. You know, obviously went through the process with the WBC and Vada there, then went through this with the National Anti-Doping Panel and UKAD. And the focus for him was always stay fit, be ready to fight. And he's worked hard, you know, with his legal team to clear his name. There's always going to be people who have opinions, and without any real detail around it, around the whole case. And it's easy to have an opinion just backed off of what a few people say on the radio, or, you know, but he's always maintained his innocence the whole way through. And looking forward to getting him back out there and fighting.
It seemed to me, just kind of when I was reading up on it all, that the judgment was passed down from the independent National Anti-Doping Panel. So UKAD have got that 21-day period to appeal any decision. I imagine that's getting closer and closer now to not happening. But have you heard anything? Will they look to appeal that resolution?
No, look, again, it's not a conversation we're directly involved in. You know, Conor's obviously led this with his legal team directly. It's a personal matter that he's dealt. You know, we've always been beside Conor the whole way through, but, you know, I haven't heard any more. Conor's focused on, you know, moving forward with his career and working with all parties to ensure we do that in the swiftest manner possible. You know, and hopefully we can move on from this, because it feels like it's been a never-ending question that's been brought up in every interview for the past year. And looking forward to the point of where we can say, right, we're good to go, and, you know, we get a fight up and running. That's really going to be the point where we get the fight up and running, is when those questions stop.
Obviously, there was some confusion over kind of the releases which came out, Frank, about what kind of was cleared of, if you will. So has he been cleared to fight in the UK, or has he been cleared of the substance which was found within him, clomiphene? Do you know what it is on that specific front? Is he 100% free to now fight in the UK?
Again, the detail of the case between Conor and led by the National Anti-Doping Panel is confidential. But in terms of Conor being able to fight, he's not suspended. So he's able to fight, free and able to fight. He has no suspension. That was obviously the piece that was stopping him from being able to fight previously, was a suspension. He's now no longer suspended. So, you know, that's the next steps. He's going through the process. You know, he's obviously, there's been talk about the British Boxing Board of Control, his license previously, and that's the next steps and the next conversations. But yeah, the suspension was lifted, which was the key point of it all.
So how long, Frank, will it be then until you realistically can get Conor a fight and getting back into the ring?
We're working, you know, we're discussing now as a team. I think, you know, it's about finding the right fight for him as well. You know, there's a lot of big opportunities out there for him. But look, Conor's 26 years old. We believe he's got a, you know, huge ability to be a star of the sport for years to come. So it's about making the right next steps, not rushing into the wrong fight. And that's what we're working through now as a team. You know, and that's the focus. Look, there's a load of names out there, you know, whether it's Kell Brook, whether it's Chris Eubank Jr. or Liam Smith winner. You know, he will literally fight anyone. He'll fight 147, 154. He'd look at 160, like I say, for the Eubank fight. So let's see what happens. But, you know, it's been a long process to get to this point. And, you know, if we got to do things the right way now, and ensure that we make the right decisions now and not rush them over a week or two or get the wrong fight that doesn't make sense for him. He's got a long career in this sport, so that whatever decision is made next has to be the right decision.
Just a couple of things to quickly wrap up on, Frank, because I know I probably kept you for a bit longer than you thought I would. Callum Smith and Beterbiev has been announced for January 13th. I saw Callum on Friday up in Liverpool, and he said he'd like to have somewhat of kind of an interim bout just to kind of shake off that ring rust, because it will be over a year himself since he was last in the ring. Are you moving on that? Is there a chance we see him back out before he fights Beterbiev?
There's a possibility. There's still discussions ongoing, so let's see what happens. It's obviously difficult because we've got so many stacked shows, and it has to be at the right time as well for him, especially with that, that's 18 weeks away, something like that, maybe 20 weeks away, roughly. So it has to be the right time frame. But yeah, we're discussing with him and the team and see what's possible.
And then final one, obviously, we saw earlier, Richard Riakporhe's come out saying that he's pulled out from the purse bids for the Jai Opetaia fight. Obviously, you guys represent Jai Opetaia, so what's your understanding behind Richard's reasons?
Again, look, it's disappointing because this isn't the first time it's happened. It's nothing. I know Richard Riakporhe very well. I really like Richard Riakporhe. I've had a great relationship with him for many years. I'm actually quite upset for him and disappointed, because he would have been sort of spun a story. Why not to do this? And it's the same old thing as what we saw when Wardley and Fraser Clark were supposed to fight. Boxer don't want to lose a purse bid to us. And that's not the bet for the benefit of your fighter. The benefit of your fighter is getting the best possible opportunities. He's worked so hard to build himself into a position to win a world title. And Boxer, Ben Shalom, don't want him to fight on another platform. That's all it comes down to. It's not good for the sport. It's not good for the fighters. Say what you want about us as a business. Say what you want about, you don't think this decision's right, this decision's right. We never will take an opportunity away from a fighter. That's the reality of it. And it's a shame to see. And, like I say, I think Richard deep down will be disappointed, because, like I say, it's everyone's dream to become a world champion. And it's not about us. I've seen some things about us playing games. It's not. We signed Jai Opetaia. We believe he's the best cruiserweight there is. We're all competitors. That's the business we're in. We represent a load of people in different weight classes. And you should give your fighter the opportunity to make as much money as possible by being involved in a purse bid between competing companies. That's all it comes down to. And again, as we've seen before, he's pulled another fighter out for his own, or this is Ben Shalom or Boxer's gain. Nothing to do with the fighter, what they want. But we go on about it all day. Now we've got to work to find a new fight and move quickly for Opetaia, because it's the second time it's happened as well. Masterneck was before this, pulled out because they were trying to do Masterneck against Callum Smith. So Masterneck pulled out, went to Riakporhe. They then, it's all a mess. But our focus is now on Jai Opetaia and getting him a fight.
One final thing, Frank, which Richard said in his statement, was that he'd accepted an offer to fight for the title on 2 occasions in 2 different locations, and when those offers were withdrawn. Do you have any knowledge on those, what you can share?
No, look, we obviously signed Jai Opetaia. That his team then told Boxer to speak to us. I got an email, and there was a few days where we were working through a few details of what we were planning to do. I then asked for a call with them, and I never heard back. So, that's the end of it. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. Go to purse bid and get paid the most amount of money possible. That's all it comes down to. Or send an email and go, just following up, we'll take your offer of X amount of money in this location. Simple as that, no? Again, it's being spun a storyline of, we can't do this because of X, Y, Z. No, you just don't want it on another platform. That's all it comes down to. Simple as that.
All right, Frank, I appreciate you jumping on and doing this Zoom. As I say, I know I probably kept you for a bit longer than you would have imagined. So thank you for speaking to me. Obviously, I hope this week goes well. And yeah, I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, pal. See you later.